Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord is nearly at its full 1-year anniversary of early access in March, and with the developers saying that they expect a 10 to 11 month early access cycle, we should be coming closer and closer to that full release schedule. With that, I've been getting a lot of questions on whether or not it's worth it to revisit Calradia once more in the year 2021. We did a similar video back in July of last year, linked in the upper right corner, covering launch all the way up to patch 1.4.3. But today we're covering the last 6 months yet again and all the major improvements that have been added to the game since 1.4.3 up to 1.5.6. If this is your first time watching a video on my channel, the way I like to do things is by front-loading all the information, then you can stay for the more detailed descriptions if you'd like, or navigate to the specific chapters denoted in the timeline for things you'd like to learn about. So, to start out, let's go through my list of changes that I will then be expanding on throughout the rest of the video. And I want to open up by talking about 5 changes from the updates from March to July. So if you don't want to even watch that video, here's just the 5 real big ones that I appreciate the most. Cultural bonuses were turned on. A new level and experience system, meaning that you level up at a faster rate in the beginning, but you don't hit a slog around level 15, 16, and 17. It'll actually keep going at a good, consistent rate. Sandbox kingdoms were added into the game, so you can simply create a kingdom by pressing a button. A new dialogue system was added, so you just simply jump into a quick menu to talk to people rather than loading into the actual game. And then huge stability, performance, and memory leak fixes have been rolled out. Now, for everything that's happened since 1.4.3, let's go into that, and because this is a pretty exhaustively large list, but I want to just give you guys a real quick upfront idea of what's going on here. So, photo mode has been added, permadeath has been fully implemented, there was a code refactor for save games, the entire game, and for item rosters, so less hangups when zoning into cities, using the cheat console, so on and so forth. Modding tools have been added, and they are quite impressive. Quick navigation buttons that allow you to add all items or units in a post-battle screen, so you can essentially basically like loot all by pressing a button, has been added into the game. Copying and pasting crafted weapons to share online has been added. Lots of unit changes and overhauls. Sturgian troops have gotten way better with the Linebreaker replacing the Berserker. Battanian mainline infantry has been given better shields, more armor for their shock infantry, and even more weapons. Empire armor has been scaled back a bit so they aren't, indomitable tanks, but they're still extremely strong. Khazate units have had their armor retooled slightly. The Darkhan lost their cool helmets, but they just recently were given it back. Volandia's armor has been changed up on their archer line, making them less tanky in the earlier tiers, but more tanky in the later tiers. Azurai has been given a nice overhaul to their tier 2 to tier 4 units across armor and weapon loadouts. Lots of gameplay options that have been added into the game too, like arrow crosshairs, like when you're using a ranged weapon. Friendly banner opacity, autosave intervals, and we'll dive into those in just a little bit. Tons of new character creation stuff has been added as far as facial hair and new hairstyles as well as colors. A lot of campaign map improvements have been made with settlement notification additions. You can keep track of armies a little bit better. Rebellions have now been added in. They will be doing keep battles in the future. They've done a lot of stuff with that. You can simply escort or follow something by just alt clicking them, so you have a lot of granularity there. The party screen now allows you to recruit prisoners up to tier 6, so if you want to get those top tier guys, you can now do that. The kingdom screen has gotten a little bit of an overhaul too with the AI, and its snowballing and diplomacy has been improved significantly. The character screen now has 80% of the perks in the game are active. And even the ones that haven't been retooled and redone, most of those are still active, and we'll go into those too. The clan screen has had some additions to it too, where your companions can be assigned as captains of units and formations in your army, as well as the clans themselves being very dynamic. You can actually marry off members of your clan. Childbirth itself has been scaled back a bit, so if you want to have 500 kids, don't expect that to happen anymore. It's been a little bit more in line. And the inventory screen has got some nice quality of life updates, as well as the combat system itself has also had a lot of improvements. It had a massive overhaul in I think 1.50. It became a lot more difficult, as well as the armor itself changed a lot in the way that you receive damage, as well as the amount of damage you can dish out with things that scale your damage back. Like, okay, hey, you can't do as much damage on a horse at the beginning of the game because you get a negative or get a penalty to it, but it does scale out way better. So it makes being a high skilled horseman actually more rewarding than not being a high-skilled swordsman or horseman. But there are some negative things here too. I want to just quickly hit on a bullet point. Caravans and workshop system is still kind of wonky and it constantly fluxes from patch to patch. The main quest is still pretty aimless, and creating your kingdom has gotten better, but still it's really hard to do. You have to do it just right, or else you just get washed off the map in no time. CJI is still a little bit kind of funky, and for the most part, you're still going to deal with some performance issues depending on your rig, but they have gotten way better, way better. And on top of it, here's some stuff that's on the horizon. We have keep battles coming out. You can now educate your children, so you can basically go through a tutoring process with them. Spear bracing for single player, so that you yourself can brace your spear against cavalry. Also, you can start breaking people out of prisons, and a crafting system rework is in the works. So that is your quick 6-minute crash course on everything that has changed in the past 6 months. Hopefully that gives you a good idea of some of the improvements, and maybe gives you an idea if you want to jump back into Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. Or for those of you that really want to get into the nitty-gritty of what's been changed, I'm going to be breaking this up by individual screen. So we'll be talking about maybe just the general improvements in the game. Then we're going to talk about character creation, the campaign map, the party screen, the kingdom screen, the character screen, so on and so forth. And that's how I'm going to divide up what we talk about to give you a sense of where to go about certain things. So if you want to learn about the perks, jump on over to the character screen section. Or if you want to hear more about the AI and snowballing and how the kingdoms interact, jump over to the kingdom screen section. Well, let's get started here on our video on all the stuff that has changed and if it's worth it to play Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord in 2021. To start us out, we're going to take a look at the campaign map. Now, I do have some other general gameplay improvements that have been made that we'll go over at the end of this section, but we'll keep it all in the same kind of window here. So to look at the campaign map to start off with, we can scroll out here. You can see that they've added in the settlement notifications that was made famous by a mod. So if I take a look over here at this city, I see that this city has a arena a tournament going on, and there's quests. Same thing here, same thing here. And this little eye denotes that I'm in range to see those notifications. So if I scroll out a little bit further, you can see that I cannot see down to here and here. So settlement notifications have been added in. Also, you can keep track of armies and companions across the map. If I scroll out here, you can see that, of course, I can't see anything over in this direction, but there are some armies from other people that I can just click, and then I can now track them even if I zoom all the way in. You know, this is over here and these are over here. So that has been added into the game. And it's the same thing with companions or caravans. If you want to track those, your own companions in your clan that have their own armies, you can just simply use those. It's a really nice thing. In addition, rebellions are now in the game. So there is a chance. Anything on this save? Unfortunately, no, there's nothing on this save. But what happens is, as soon as a city reaches -25 happiness, then what will happen is they will revolt. They'll basically constantly check the revolt's strength versus the garrison's strength. And as soon as it gets high enough, it will revolt against that garrison and take it for itself. And over time, it will try to become an independent faction that then will look to ally with another kingdom. So for example here, let's say this location, it would revolt, it would become a blue and yellowish or purplish color as its faction banner, and then it would look to join typically not the faction it revolted from. So if it revolted from Khazate, it would say, I want to join into Sturgia as a result. So a very nice little addition that's been added, and we're looking to probably get more of that. That only came here in the most recent patch 1.5.6. In addition here, village scenes have been added in. So anytime you zone into a village, it'll be a little bit more diverse, won't be the same one. And also, if I go over here to this guy, I can alt left click him and my character will follow him no matter where he goes. And this is nice if you're trying to track a caravan, or you're trying to just to kind of keep a good close eye on a specific NPC. You can see I'm just going to keep following this guy in kind. In addition, you can now pay extra to have a more heavily guarded caravan. So if you have a caravan, we'll see if I do in this character here. No caravans on this character, but you can choose to pay the standard fare or a little bit more. I believe it's 15,000 for the standard and 17,500 for the more advanced one. And your character will, or that caravan will then have almost double the troops on it. So if you're worried about that, that'll now be taken care of for you. What I also want to talk about now are those general campaign improvements I was discussing. So they have added permadeath into the game. I don't have it activated here in these campaign options because this was after that was made. But when you make your character, if you click enable death, then any character in the game that dies forever. So do be mindful of that, but it is a feature that a lot of people wanted added into the game. You can also do a lot of really nice gameplay tweaking. So I can change the autosave interval that happens. So every 15 minutes, the game will autosave, or up to 60, or it's down to disabled if I so wish. So we'll put that back there. Going into options too, we get a lot of cool granularity in the gameplay section. So in the past, you could simply turn on and off the friendly troop banners. Well, now you can change this to a sliding opacity. So if you want it to be 100% visible, you got 1.0, or maybe I just want a nice 20% visibility. There you go, 0.20. Also, they have separated and broken out the way that the casualties and the damage is done. It used to be that you could see your damage and how much it does in the center of the screen, but that was also linked to the scrolling casualty list. That has now been broken out into two separate options. So report casualty, report damage, and report personal damage. Of course, three different things here. In addition to, we also have some other nice little stuff on here, the UI scale, the damage takedown visuals, but mainly crosshair type. You can now switch this to 4 or 3 part, and then the order visuals type, you can switch from either the standard bar system that we're all used to, or a radial order menu that is a little bit better when you're using, say, a controller. So those are some of the nice gameplay options that have been added to the game. In addition to that, there was a massive code refactor for save games. So if I click load game right now, you can see that all of my save games are nested into these nice categories, so they're easier to jump into. Unfortunately, any of your old saves will go into uncategorized, so you'd have to unfortunately go and find them through there. But any of your newer campaigns break out into their own campaign category, which is really nice. I think the next logical progression for this is the ability to rename these, or at least name them when you press save, or maybe the campaign name is named after the character or the family that you're playing. So at least it's a little bit easier to navigate through. So a very nice addition to the game. The entire game itself has had a code refactor, as well as the items roster. So it's a lot easier to just navigate through a large inventory list when you're looking at a keep, the actual cheat console, anything like that. Also, I had mentioned this in the recap portion, but there is now the ability to quickly navigate through menus by using buttons on the keyboard. So if I say, if I were to just say, do that, well, I can move all of it to one location by pressing Z. So that's really nice, but I can press Q and E to quickly switch tabs or switch different characters I'm looking at. So you have a lot of really nice playability, functionality, little quality of life changes. And we're gonna jump back to the inventory screen because there's even more stuff for this. But another big one too is the way that all of the troops have changed. I'm going to break off of here. We'll go right here. I'm going to press N, and we're going to go to home and then the units. So the units as a whole have gotten reworked entirely. Let's go to Strix because I think that's the one people care about the most, or at least are most interested in its change. So Strix as a whole has gotten an improvement from its tier 2s all the way down to its tier 5. Tier 5 is broken out into heavy spearmen now and heavy axemen versus the shock troop and veteran that it was once before. The Stygian spearmen themselves also have nice chainmail armor versus the crappy leather armor they had before. The Berserker line was dropped for the Linebreaker line, which is definitely more of a heavy armored infantry style soldier here. You can see some of the new Stygian armor that's been added as well. And the Hardened and Horse Raider characters were given spears, so they have a lot more threat range into multiple targets and not just simply a close combat weapon and a throwing weapon. That covers Strix for us. Britannia as a whole too has gotten a nice change. The tier 1 for the most part all carry these huge two-handed sledgehammers. That's a pretty recent change to 1.5.6. But when we look at the clan warriors, into the trained warriors, into the picked warriors, into the Oathsworn, they have been given spears, they've been given nicer, better shields, and in some cases larger shields, especially for the picked and the Oathsworn. The scouts and the horsemen have gotten an armor upgrade, so they're a little bit more durable now. Same thing here with the raider into the Falksman and the veteran Falksman, and the Britannian skirmisher line is still really, really damn good. Moving into Azrai, we can take a look at these real quick. The tiers 2 and 3 have gotten nice changes to their armament. For the most part, everything in the Azrai was very strong. after tier 3. Tier 3 has gotten a really nice change, good solid armor choices for both the skirmisher and the footman, as well as good armor choices, not just simply being relegated to a simple roll with a spear, or I'm sorry, a shield and a mace that now gets spears in both sections, so they have a little bit better of a threat range. Now, when we talk about another really popular faction, the Imperial faction, the Imperial faction has been interesting because it's always been really top tier when it comes to armor, right? Well, it's been scaled back a little bit. It is still quite strong and still has quite a good armament, but you can see that things have been tweaked a little bit here. The Palatine Guard is no longer covered head to toe in scale armor. It's now in chainmail. The Bucellarii itself too has been scaled back in its armor. We see the same thing here on the Sergeant Crossbowman. But the Legionary and the Elite Manavliaton are both very, very strong infantry soldiers that have some of the best armor in class. Now, that is our second to last one. We got to do Kazate after this one. But Volandia, or Volandia for that matter, has for the most part stayed very much the same, especially in the tier 5 and 6 categories. 3 has gotten an improvement to its armor and armament, meaning that it actually has a little bit more variety. The infantry now has a spear and the spearman now has a sword. Now, that is of course really weird, but it means that you're not just kind of at a dead end, depending on which one you choose. They'll actually progress to tier 4 and 5 a lot easier. Now, for all of the crossbowmen, they have had a massive armor reduction in their earlier tiers, and their later tiers have gotten a better armor overall loadout. So up to tier 5, you're still dealing with some pretty meager armor, but as soon as you hit that, up to tier 4, up to tier 6 now, you get a much better armor loadout, so your characters can actually last at that top tier a little bit. It's just going to be a bit of an uphill challenge to get them there. I'd say of all the factions though, Kazate has really been the one that's been least touched. In fact, one of the biggest things that's changed is the Dark Hands helmet. Like, that it changed from this helmet to a different helmet. Now it's back to this helmet in 1.5.6. For the most part, almost everything else though with Kazate is pretty much the same since launch, aside from minor tweakings to some pieces of armor or getting better shields, getting nicer weapons that scale with their actual tier. But for the most part, Kazate has been pretty much untouched. It's been really bringing Sturgia up to snuff, bringing Empire down a little bit in its durability, and making Britannia, Volandia, and Aserai units that were very ineffective more effective now. But that kind of covers things from a general gameplay perspective. I did want to go over this first most, or at least towards the beginning of the video, because I know a lot of people are wondering what has changed with the troops. But now we're going to go through some individual screens, starting with the character screen and talking about talents and how they've changed up to 1.5.6. Moving into the character screen, the biggest thing to talk about are the perks. Now, of course, as everyone knows, every single skill has got a set of perks. At the creation of the last video that we did, 43% of the current perks in the game were active. Now, it's at 87%. So I'm going to flash up a picture on the screen. It's going to show you what percentage of perks are active per skill. You can find this quick and easy at bannerlordperks.com. You can find that in the description there. You can quickly jump over and find out everything you need to. But as you can see, pretty much everything is over 70%, with tactics and roguery being the lowest one outside of engineering at 0%. Now, smithing and engineering, I think, are going to be getting two big overhauls. They've said that they're going to be doing a crafting rework in the game, so that is coming. But even take a look at Charm. Charm has 95% of its perks active, and they haven't even redone Charm yet. Every single perk now has a campaign and a combat map attribute. And so you get a dual purpose for every single perk. It's not just simply, okay, I'm going to get this perk, and it's going to only help one specific instance. And it will tell you whether or not it applies to you personally, you as a captain, you as a quartermaster, and how that's then going to apply to your companions as you select them. So the perk system has been not even say overhauled, it's just been fleshed out finally. So we're at 87%. If engineering were even at 80%, we would be over 90% total perks active within the game now. And that is a huge jump in the last 6 months. When the game came out, we were roughly around like 25, 35% of perks were active. So if you've not played since launch, pretty much everything's going to be working for you, including that cunning line with scouting, tactics, and roguery. But those are the main things I wanted to talk about here in the character screen, because I think it is the biggest and most important portion of the skills and character portion RPG of this game. Jumping into the inventory screen, you can see that for the most part it is very much the same, because effectively it hasn't changed a whole ton. You can now navigate through things, like I was saying, using Q and E a little bit easier and quicker. But for the most part, the nice quality of life updates that we've received is this one right here. So I can hover over it to see all of this character's skills. So if you're navigating through tons of companions, say I jump over to this guy and you just don't remember what his skills were, or you look at an old save, whatever it is, or you're coming back for after a long time, hover it over, gives you all their skills. You can decide what you want to equip them with. In addition, you have this button that will allow you to swap your horse and main character out, so you can see what the harness looks like, what that specific horse looks like. A lot of nice little things there. Now, I did say there were some new armors added to the game, and I've put them all over here. I'm not going to put them on the horse, I'm going to put them on me. Why is the horse there? There we go. So I'll take this off and you can see them real quick. These are the new Battanian armors. So a lot of really cool kind of evolving armors off of the same suit of armor. You can see that was just the same thing with a different base layer. Where's that? Nice, really cool ones here with the reinforced Fian mail, the reinforced mail over tartan, and the scale over mail armor right there. So just to give you a sample of, there's also some different shoulders and headpieces they've added too, but this is like the main cool ones I wanted to talk about. Also for Sturgia, you get some nice cool lamellar armor. This is the short vest, this is the normal vest, this is over mail, and this one is over a hauberk. So nice evolution there with a bunch of different variations on shoulder pieces. So if I actually jump all the way to the top here, these are all the new shoulder variations that they've added, which are for the most part normal shoulder pieces broken up into different constituent parts, so you can get a little variety with your shoulder armor. But not a whole ton has changed here in the inventory screen. Just wanted to highlight some of those things before we move on to our next section. Moving into the party screen, we have another little quick one. It's the ability now to recruit higher than tier 4 troops. So if I collapse this, I go look at my prisoners, I can now see that I can recruit pretty much everyone. This tier 6 guy will be recruitable, it just takes a long time. So basically what they've said is that every day there is a hidden number that accrues over time, and once that number hits or reaches its capacity, that unit is then able to be recruited into your troops, into your party. Now, certain skill lines like roguery, for example, will enable you to reduce that amount of time and they'll be coaxed into joining you faster. Just depends on what it is. Now, in addition to this, they've also added the ability now, or at least the functionality, where recruiting prisoners into your party can actually cause a leadership penalty. So I should work right here. So if you look right now, you'll see my party morale is at 87 with base 5 recent events, 1.5 as a positive integer, personal 36 positive, and food variety -1. Now watch what happens when I bring these. Oops, wrong number. Press that. Press this. Press this. I think I have to press done for it to go through, but once I press done, we'll take a look at that recent events. Remember, it's at 1.52. Wait for it to go through, and it immediately takes a hit and jumps to -6.48. So putting bandits into your party now gives you a leadership penalty, so you need to use the roguery line to take advantage of that. You can't just simply use bandits and kind of harass that, or not harass, but abuse the fact that you can just put them into the top tier noble line, like say forest bandits, for example. You now will take a leadership penalty, and you have to use roguery and leadership in conjunction to get a really good bandit army if you so wish. But that is our quick overview of the new party screen, or at least the additions to the party screen. Those prisoners are a huge addition to the game. For the clan screen, things for the most part are pretty much the same, but we now have the addition of our brother. As soon as you complete the first quest in the game, you now have your brother that will join your party, bringing with you your other brother and your sister. In addition to that, you can now marry off your companions. All the companions you recruit through the tavern districts, you can now have them basically create their own families. Also, the AI and their clans, there's A, way more of them now, way more lords and clans, and B, they will now start to dynamically grow. They will have children, those children will marry, and so on and so forth. So if you want to play in perpetuity, you definitely can, because it will keep growing. With the addition of permadeath, it is now kind of a necessary thing to have, right? All these clans, with these clans constantly growing and marrying off. You'll be able to see in the lower left corner if 2 people actually marry. And you can filter the encyclopedia by married or unmarried if you want to find a suitable spouse. Now, in addition to, you get some more granularity in the finance menu, but 2 big things that don't actually take place on this screen go into. Jump here into the city. We're going to press this addition button. This is part of the new emissary system. So I can now leave a character here, let's just say my wife, for example, and leave her in the settlement. She'll go into the keep and hang out there and play craps or whatever she does. But what's important here is that she will increase your reputation with each notable within that city, which will then allow you to, of course, recruit more troops and get better overall outcome. Especially if you own the city, you can increase the reputation with those notables. They'll like you more. It'll increase your public order, basically, and make it so you don't have as many revolts. Now, a nice thing about this is, if I jump back to the character menu, this will increase based off of her charm skill, and it will also give her charm experience, which is quite nice. So this gives you a great way to finally use charm on a companion if you so wish. Now, since we're on this screen, let's go over to this character, Timir Frostbeard. So he has 209 bow, and we're going to look at one of these skills, Bodkin. It says personal/captain. Bow-equipped troops in your formation ignore 5% of enemies' armor. So this is a new addition to the game. Of course, we talked about this earlier with the fact that most perks have a dual purpose, one campaign and one combat, but we also now have companions that can be assigned as captains. So take this guy, for example. Timir Frostbeard is clearly an archer. So I have him, I'm going to jump over here into my party screen. He also has 119 riding. That's relevant. Jumping into my party screen, we're going to take a look at him. I've put him in formation number 4. So he will now act as the captain of this formation, giving that bonus to bows in this formation, as well as any riding related bonuses that have the captain parenthetical notation attached to it. So Timir Frostbeard is again that captain. He's going to give those bonuses to my horse archers. Laska here is my cavalry commander, so she's going to give it to horses. This guy is my archer master, so it's going to be for all range units. And do I have anyone on foot? No, I don't. That's just an outrage. Well, I'm playing Khazate, so it makes sense. But again, you assign them to the formation. As long as they have been assigned to that formation first, they will be the captain of that formation. As you can see here, my wife is also in number 4. She will not give her captain skills to this formation. Only that captain will. But a nice new addition to the game, a great way to give the captain skills a little bit more relevance when it's not just you, the main character, being a captain in another alliance's army. Jumping into our final screen here is the kingdom screen. Now, I don't have a whole ton of things to show off on this screen aside from the ability now to give away any of the holdings in which you've been granted, or if you are the ruler, the leader of the kingdom, you can now give them away as well. So you have this ability. For the most part, though, policies, armies, everything is very much the same as it was back in July, with maybe some few tweaks here and there. But what I will talk about is how the AI now reacts to a lot of these things. For one, your influence now increases at a better rate. It's been tweaked back from where it was in 1.4.3. It was very hard to gain influence. Now it scales very nicely according to whatever prisoners you either donate or prisoners that you decide to give over to a garrison, whatever it is. It's been scaled better to be less effective in the lower tiers and more effective in the higher tiers, as it should be. So gaining influence again is no longer such a grind. In addition, you can now inherit the kingdom. So if I say was in good standing with enough of the people within this kingdom, enough of these clans, then I would be able to vie for the leadership of the kingdom whenever the leader does die, if you have permanent death on. So if you see him pass away, you just pretty much have to make sure you are kind of managing that relationship with all those other people. That's when your emissaries come into really good use, or just helping out on the battlefield. Now, also, diplomacy was a really big issue, right? You'd be stuck in all these endless wars. Well, now The AI is way better at deciding whether or not to go to war, will not be at war with more than 2 factions at once, and they will vote to end a war if they're either being crushed or they're crushing. So it's a lot harder for the AI to snowball, not just because of the diplomacy, but they've also added the ability for factions that have been destroyed to quote unquote come back a lot easier. And there's no more artificial inflation. Basically what was happening is essentially the AI kingdoms were more or less printing money. They would do a couple things and it would just cause a landslide of money for them. And that's why the stronger factions got way stronger and the weaker factions got way weaker. So this has happened since 1.5.6, and it's seen a pretty significant curtailing to the snowballing that goes on with the AI, and it is a much needed change to the game. But as a whole though, for the most part, this screen will be very much as you've left it if you played in July. If you haven't played since March, things are going to look pretty wild. You can see a lot of new different things here. You can see all the wars that are going on. It's a lot better of a system than it was before. Just like the clan screen itself has also been completely redone since March. Looks a lot better, a lot more streamlined. Now here we are on the combat map to show off some of the big things that have happened here. Now this is of course a big portion of the game, so this makes a lot of sense. Some things I'll be able to exemplify, some things I will not be able to exemplify as easily. For example, horses can become lame if they die in combat, thus reducing their stats, unless you have the veterinarian perk from riding, which greatly reduces that if the horse is killed out from under you or shot out from under you. But one of the biggest changes that has happened is how formations move. And we've even talked about this as early as 1.4.3, but now the way the game works is the formation will keep its cohesion depending on what formation it is. The shield wall is a really good example, probably one that people use the most. So I'm going to press the button here. We're going to see these guys start to move, but you'll see that they stay in tow. They don't kind of get jobbled up. Even a patch in 1.4.3, I think it was a patch then, enabled it so that they stayed relatively in formation. This locks it so that the slowest unit pretty much determines the speed of the entire unit. They would still kind of get a little staggered and mixed up. It just doesn't happen like that anymore, which is very nice. In addition to that, we get a nice new scoreboard here. Let me press this button. And this for the most part looks the same, right? But now you can sort it. I can sort it by kills, by upgrades, by dead, and by default, you start at the top. The leader of whoever's party it is starts at the top, so you can see them quickly to see if they're even still alive if there's multiple parties involved in a conflict. So you have a lot of nice granularity to it. You can just collapse that party if you so wish to quickly get to yours. Some nice management, quality of life update in the scoreboard menu. Some other nice little things, or I guess different things, is you can see my cursor right now. It is got the 3 little crosshairs here. I had talked about this. I go to gameplay, go down here to 3-part, look at 4-part. It's just the standard one you probably already know. Now, another one is order visuals type, bar. Bar is what the game typically is. They've even streamlined this to be less intrusive. It's pretty much 3 buttons that you're going to access, but radial is the new one that they've changed it to. Well, not changed it to, it's an option you have. So you can see if I press F1, it brings up the new radial menu. So follow me, move to position. So if you're used to using the commands the old way, you have a specific muscle memory, like, okay, F1, F3. Now they're all going to charge. F1, F2, follow me, F1, F1. So that's all built into radial if you have that muscle memory. Otherwise, options, gameplay, you can switch back over here to bar. And that's the one it was before, right? So for the most part, everything's the same, but some things have been kind of moved around a little bit. Like I don't press F6, you press F3 to toggle, to then go into hold fire or delegate command. So that has been changed a little bit, and it is worth noting right there. But a nice new radial menu. You have the ability to lock onto things by holding down the middle mouse button, which is cool. But combat as a whole has changed. So if you were on a horse, I think everyone kind of knows, oh man, I'm going to start on a horse and I'm going to be so strong. Well, now every single horse or every character has a minus 20% to their ranged and melee damage on a horse until they skill their skill up. And I think it's around 100, 120 until that kind of hits a baseline of 0 and then starts becoming positive. So you do have to keep in mind that the horse, while it used to be very strong, is still strong, but not as strong as it was before. I have 163 riding, so I'm like a sniper at full speed. Like, look at that, it's disgusting. This bar will be way bigger if you just first start the game. So that is worth noting. But in addition to, archery has been overhauled entirely. So if you have a short bow that shoots faster, well, let's come to a complete stop here. When I hold down left click, see how the reticle kind of, it expands out, then gets tight. Well, it takes time for that to happen on a longer bow that does more damage and shoots slower. So you might be more accurate at range, but the bow itself will take time to actually get and acquire that shot like that. And that will increase with time if you're, decrease with time if you have a higher bow skill. Your archery has been changed. In addition, the combat AI is much better. When they first made the change, I was kind of floored by it, to be totally honest. It just was way harder. They kind of are they're really good at keeping you kind of in tow and making sure that you don't just steamroll over them, especially in arenas. Arenas do give you experience too, which is nice to note. But as a whole, I do really like what they've done with the combat. Knockback effects are in, so if I were to say use this, what's it? Don't I have something? Maybe I just have a sword here. Maybe I can get one. If you hit someone with a specific axe or something like that, they will really go flying. So you have quite a lot you can do now. You can pretty much unhorse people with that, and the AI has the ability to brace spears. That is not added in for the player character just yet, but it probably will in the weeks and days to come here. I'll go ahead and do that. You guys can see some combat. So that is a really nice change. In 1.5.6, the most recent patch, there's also been a nice shield blocking overhaul. So now if you have a shield and you block to the left, or even just a weapon you block to the left and the swing comes from the right, if you don't move to block it, you will take as much damage as you should. Prior to this, your damage was actually being scaled because you had that shield up and you were able to block it in unnatural angles, and that has been fixed, that has been changed. Shields respond a lot better. You should have less of the ghost shield issue, in which case you are blocking, but the sword passes through the shield. That's kind of been curtailed back a lot, which is very nice. But one last thing to show you in this screen. Where's my character? Here he is. He was just marching off into the distance over here. Press escape and press photo mode. You have a nice new photo mode you can go into. You've got plenty of abilities to kind of hide the UI, nice little fancy one, but you can go through a ton of stuff here. I was using a mod called Photo Mod that allows me to go anywhere, and the photo mode is getting there. It's just that I also wanted to be able to let the scene play itself out, so that's what allowed me to do this. But the photo mode is a nice, really cool touch here. You get some really awesome action shots. He's creepily looking at me too. God, man, that's some self-respect. But some nice new changes added to the combat map, and plenty of stuff to come here. Like I said, the brace spears are only accessible for multiplayer and the AI, but you will eventually be able to brace a spear so you can stop cavalry dead in their tracks. And the archery changes are huge in and of themselves, as well as all those big combat changes, especially to mounted combat. Now that we've gone through pretty much all the positive changes to Bannerlord, there are still some negative things that either have happened or are still in need of fixing. So to start out, minor clans are still heavily nerfed. If I jump over here to home, to clans, to minor, and jump into any of these guys, all of their units are still pretty pitiful. They got a pretty heavy nerf back in 1.4.1 or so, and since then they just have not been awesome units. I would like a way to be able to recruit them from the tavern, which you can do in a mod, but I'd like to just see that added into the base game. In addition to that, caravans and workshops, let's see if I have any high producing ones right now in my clan, are really hit or miss. It just kind of depends on what's going on. Right now, hey, look, my tanner and my potter are doing pretty decent. My carpenter and brewer just aren't. And that just differs from patch to patch. You might have a patch where it just is absolutely crushing it and it's doing well. The most recent patch did fix a lot of workshops and make them out to be a lot better than they were, but now caravans have taken a hit. So that is something that's going to constantly be in flux until they fine-tooth comb that. And that's something also worth noting. It does feel like every patch we get a lot of new things. Then it also breaks a lot of old things. So there's always kind of a little bit of catch up that does need to be played. But for the most part, I haven't personally had it really hinder my gameplay very much at all. In addition to, the main quest does need a little bit of love. It is still pretty boring. There's no reason for me to really want to finish this at all because I'm not making my own kingdom, so it doesn't really bother or affect me. They still have to put some more oomph into it, and they are. They've added 2 new main story quests since July, and that's pretty huge. So at least they're responding to the fact that people do want more out of this. It just needs a more narrative behind it. I think that that's coming in time. Like I said before, creating your own kingdom, though, is still... well, it can be done. It can be done easier than it was before. All you have to be is clan tier 4. There's a button here that says create kingdom. You press it, you're done. You have a kingdom, you're set. But if you don't do it just right with a large enough army, with a nice presence amongst the other clans, then you just get steamrolled. You have to really increase your relationship with a lot of the other people from the realm, especially the ones that you're going to be neighboring if you do create your own kingdom. Or else, like I said, you just get kiboshed too quickly. You just get sunk. But Siege AI has gotten a lot better, especially since launch, since July, but it still does need a little bit more tweaking. The AI can still kind of bug out on specific siege maps. It uses siege ladders way better, but I think that the Siege AI is going to change when or if ever they do a overhaul to engineering and how that works, because we still haven't had that touched since the game came out, and it still has 0% of its perks active. So I'm assuming that that will be coming in the weeks and months to come. Armor still can be kind of finicky at some point where it does feel really heavy and burly and you can just take shot after shot after shot. But then there's other times where it just feels like you're wearing paper. So that was a critique I had back in 1.4.3, and it has gotten way better since, but I will say that it is still somewhat of an issue, and maybe I just expect to be impervious, and that's a me problem, but there are some things that can still be tweaked on it. And like I said before in 1.4.3, you have to pay for your wife. You know what? I come to a video game so I don't have to do this. But amongst all the negative things, there are still so many positive things about Bannerlord. Another big thing I would like to see that it does go along with the positive is they have added those modding tools, and we've seen some great stuff, some amazing Warhammer mods with really cool high elves and stuff like that. But I do want to see a functional workshop. I've seen games in early access for less time with a functional Steam workshop to make deploying these mods way easier. If you play with mods right now, it can be very difficult to keep everything updated and running because the game's patched semi-frequently enough that it breaks a lot of those mods. And a lot of modders have decided, hey, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait until we're on a more stable version before I even get into this and have the modding tools actually help me out in repairing those versions of my mod, rather than just kind of hoping that it works from patch to patch. But outside of all those things, there are some things that they've said from developer updates that are on the horizon. Keep battles are coming in with Siege Warfare, so you'll be able to do some really fun, big, huge keep battles that you're able to do in Warband. So after you've beat the actual city, still onto that main keep to fight. Educating your children, actually tutoring them up, spear bracing for you, the actual player, breaking people out of prisons. So any nobles or companions that are captured and put in prisons, you'll be able to break them out. And they have said this back in dev update 1 or 2, so quite a few months ago, that a crafting system rework is in the works. At that, it brings our video here to a close. So hopefully this gives you a really good idea of how things have shaped up in Calradia since the game came out in March and since our last video back in July. Now, I know you might still have some more questions, and by all means, feel free to ask them in the comment section and I will help you out as best I can. One thing that's really nice to note is that Tailworlds has been very responsive to people on Reddit, on the forums, in these videos. They've been very responsive towards community feedback. So you can see that a lot of the things that have actually changed and been added to the game are things that people have requested the most from a lot of those different forums and platforms. So I'm really excited to see where we go with Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord. And I think the ultimate question is, should you return? And I'm not sure if I've really hinted it enough throughout the video, and I truly believe that the game is in a great place. I thought it was in a great place back in July, and I thought it was a great place back in March when it came out, but it's only stronger, it's only better now. But I will say though, if you are looking for tons of new content, there is not a lot yet. We finally are starting to get stuff like I was talking about with those rebellions, the keeps, and having those battles in the keeps in the future will be a really great thing to have in the game. But as of right now, if you've already exhausted 300 or 400 or 500 hours into the game, like I've said, you're really not going to find a whole ton new. But if you put the game down because you didn't like the state of where it was when it first came out, you are going to be in a much better place here. The game is way more stable, runs way faster, and it's just a lot better running game. I love the way it is right now. It's in a great iteration. So hopefully, like I said, this helped you out. Go ahead and let me know in the comment section below any other things that you would want to let people know about that maybe I missed that were added to the game. Please, by all means, let people know in the comment section below. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of fun action. But have a good one and take care.